So, you've decided you want to become a bright young thing of the 20s and 30s. How fabulous, darling. I need to see if you're suitable though, so I'm going to have to ask you a few questions. Before we do, let me tell you a little bit more about what you're getting yourself into. The Bright Young Things were a nickname that was given to the kind of bohemian set of the 20s and 30s by the tabloid press. The Bright Young Things were outrageous and they were scandalous. They were the daughters and the sons of the aristocracy and the middle class. They were the ones that didn't go to war but had seen the effects of war, and for whatever reason they didn't want to go back. Perhaps it was the changing in women's rights, with women over the age of 30 getting the vote in 1918. Perhaps it was the Great War itself, seeing all that bloodshed and just thinking, I want to live every day as if it's the last. Or maybe they just didn't want to go back to the stuffy Victorian and Edwardian values. Whatever reason, they become the Bright Young Things, scandalous and society. They were fantastic. So, now you know a little bit about the role that you're getting yourself into, let's start with the questions. Question 1. What's your personality like? Are you outrageous? Or are you a bit of a wallflower? So you could probably guess which ones the Bright Young Things were. They were rebellious, they were outrageous, they were attention-seeking, some of which were promiscuous, but most of all, and most importantly, they were all truly glamorous. Okay, next question. How would you be at handling the tabloid press? So the 1920s and 30s, their Bright Young Things were kind of the celebrities of the day. The tabloid press loved them. Now, they might not have agreed with what they were getting up to, but people were fascinated by them and their behaviour, and they wanted to know what they were getting up to next. So if you want to become a bright young thing, you've got to get used to the press. Next question's a bit of a tricky one. What are your views on drugs and alcohol? So, the Bright Young Things drank, and they drank to excess, and some of them also took drugs. They took kind of what we'd describe as kind of class C drugs, so kind of lower class, but they also took drugs like heroin, and cocaine was also very popular at the time as well. And they actually took them often to heighten their behaviour, if you can believe that it needed heightening anyway. Now, are you at university? Don't worry, because we can accommodate for you. So as well as the weekend parties and the fancy dress parties and things like that, they also had the bring your own bottle parties like we have today back at Oxford and Cambridge universities and other similar universities too. This was because families had often had to pay death duties after the war, so money was a bit more tight, and so they did bring your own bottle parties because it was cheaper and still lots of fun. Now, do you like to stay out all night, or do you like to be in bed by 8 PM? Again, you can probably guess which one the Bright Young Things were. They loved to stay out late, and they loved nightclubs, cocktail bars, jazz clubs, especially in big cities like London, and they stayed out till, well, dawn. Are you a well-spoken person, or do you like to use slang? So the 1920s and 30s kind of bohemian-y set, they kind of had their own sort of language. They called things like alcohol giggle water, which I think is brilliant, but also instead of calling each other sir or madam or by their actual official titles, they like to call each other really nice names like darling and, you know, really kind of cute petsy names. Now, are you willing to make yourself look truly glamorous? So something that I love about the Bright Young Things and this kind of bohemian-y set was how they looked. They kind of looked how they wanted to look. They looked truly outrageous and glamorous. A lot of men, if they wanted to wear makeup, they did. If they wanted to wear outrageous clothes, they did. And with women, it was the same. They liked to copy their favourite actresses and wear their hair short and their dresses short as well. Which, if you've got to think, going from the Edwardian times into the 20s was a big, massive change. They also smoked and went on fad diets because they believed it made them thin, but obviously it had massive health implications. A lot of women ended up fainting. And of course, if we look at vintage dresses from the 1920s and some of the 30s as well, but more the 20s, they don't have that much of a big bust, and that is because they padded their breasts down to make themselves flatter. So they look like, well, they were just so thin, weren't they? Last question. Are you willing to just embody your sexual freedom? The bright young things of the 1920s and 30s were kind of known for their promiscuity. This wasn't all of them, this is just some of them, and of course when some people do it, they kind of all get coined as it. And this was partly true. Some of this bright young thing kind of set, they experimented with their sexuality, and contraception in the 1920s and 30s was very progressive, and contraception was a lot more reliable, it was a lot more readily available, so if people wanted to have sex, they could have sex and they didn't have to think too much about the consequences. And I think for me, the favourite thing about this bohemian set was their sexuality. There were a lot of people that were kind of gay in this set because in the 20s and 30s it was still illegal to be gay. However, in the Bohemian Bright Young Things set, it didn't matter if you were gay or not. So there was men in relationships with women, there were men in relationship with men, and there were women in relationship with women, and no one cared. They thought, you love them, I love them, let's all get on. Who cares? This was just a group that was way ahead of its time. So those are all the questions. Let me know in the comment section down below how you answered and what you'd like to become next. So you want to become a blah blah blah. Answer it down in the comments below. Before I go, I just thought I'd recommend a book to you. Now this book is a book that I think is brilliant for the study of the bright young things of the 20s and 30s, and it of course is Vile Bodies by Evelyn Waugh. There is a film adaptation of this. It was directed by Stephen Fry, and funnily enough it's called Bright Young Things. And I think Vile Bodies, although some people kind of struggle with Evelyn Waugh's writing style, I think it is brilliant if you're wanting to kind of learn more about the bright young things, learn about their sexualities, learn about the way that their friendship worked and how they fitted into society, and it has everything that I talked about right in this book and so much more. So if you want to learn more about the bright young things, pick up Vile Bodies. So I really hope you enjoyed this video. I take so long to prepare for these, it's ridiculous, but I hope you enjoyed it. Please hit the subscribe button if you haven't done already for more videos on history and vintage and everything like that. So take care and I shall see you soon. Bye! Ah, my head. This thing's really hurting my head. Oh, oh no! Now I think I look like a Greek goddess.